I'd like to ask why you are charging more to ship our cargo.
Well, hold on a minute. Let me take a look.
You better not pull my leg here. I've come all this way to get this shipped, and now that I'm being charged even more, there's no way that I have that kind of money.
Excuse me, my apologies. You're charged an additional fee because there's a slight difference with the originally reported dimensions and the actual dimension of your cargo. The cargo is over width, and there is not enough clearance between the cargo and corner posts of the container, which will prohibit the cargo from passing through the entry guide. Because this cargo can't pass through the entry guide, we can't place it in the original space and we'll have to relocate it on deck. The increase of the space requires additional expenses. Remember to pay close attention when providing the dimensions and making the calculations next time.
Thank you, Senior. That was really scary. Thank goodness you came to the rescue.
All right, Junior. Did you understand what happened just now? Why can't their cargo pass through the entry guide right now? Why does this require additional expenses?
Is this a test, Senior?
Of course. Let's see if you listened carefully during the training course. First, tell me how many types of cargo are transported by container vessels and how they are loaded on board.
No problem. Cargo refers to something that is loaded into a container. When the cargo is loaded into a general-purpose container, it can be stacked together like blocks and hung using a gantry crane and a normal spreader. However, when the dimensions and weight of the cargo exceed the specification of general-purpose containers, they cannot be loaded into general-purpose containers. They need to use other methods to be loaded and require additional expenses. It's like giving someone a gift. If I were to give someone a pair of sneakers, it would be easier to pack and ship the sneakers by using a fixed-size shoebox. But if we want to pack a vase that looks weird and is really big, packaging the vase will take a lot of work. There are two types of cargoes that cannot be loaded into general-purpose containers, namely out-of-gauge, OOG, and break bulk cargo, BB cargo. The difference between the two is that OOG cargo only needs one container, while BB cargo refers to cargo that is too big or too heavy to be loaded using only one container. Let's talk about OOG cargo. There are three types of containers to load OOG cargo: open-top containers, OT, flat racks, FR, and platforms, PF. Make sure you remember what they're called. If the cargo is too high and exceeds the specifications of general-purpose containers, clients will have to use open-top containers. Assume that a client wants to transport a 5-meter-high giraffe. We can't snap the giraffe's neck in half, can we? Therefore, we'll open the top of the container and use an open-top container to ship the giraffe.
Wait, why are we talking about giraffes?
It was just an example.
Seriously, don't put live animals into containers. That would be very disturbing.
Sorry about that. I was just trying to be funny, Senior. I'll continue talking about flat racks and platforms. Flat racks and platforms are not the same as general-purpose containers with 4 walls. They rely on the base plate and lashing to carry the cargo. The difference between flat rack and platform is whether or not the corner posts are erected. These two containers are usually used for loading OOG cargo, since overheight cargo cannot be hung by normal spreaders. Overheight frames or wire slings are used for hanging this type of cargo. The rack in flat rack means shelf, which presents the corner posts of the container are erected. The plat in platform suggests that it's flat, which presents the corner posts are collapsed. In this situation, overheight frames cannot be used to hang the cargo, and we'll need to use the manual application of wire slings for hanging operations. Senior, there's something I don't understand. If using wire slings is troublesome, why are we still using platforms? Why don't we just erect all of the corner posts?
Even though the erected corner posts allow us to use overheight frames for hanging and save the trouble and danger of manually using wire slings, the corner posts themselves take up space like a fence, and it will limit the dimension of the cargo. That's why the overlength cargo is not suitable for being loaded on the flat rack. It should be loaded on the platform instead. By the way, Youngmin's flat rack can be freely transformed into a platform or flat rack by folding the corner posts like this.
Oh, it looks like a large foldable table in conference rooms.
Exactly. You're correct this time. You really did a good job talking about the open top, flat rack, and platform for OOG cargo.
Thank you, Senior. I have to talk about them in detail so that our Yangming newcomers sitting in the audience can understand easier.
The audience?
It's nothing. Anyways, let's talk about the other kind of cargo that cannot be loaded into general-purpose containers, which is BB cargo. When the dimension of the cargo is too huge or the weight is too heavy over the payload of a single container, not only can't you use general-purpose containers, but you also can't load as OOG. If one flat rack isn't enough, then put some of them together. This type of cargo is called BB cargo. BB cargo will use multiple platforms or flat racks as base plates, as they must be hung separately. General-purpose containers, or OOG cargo, can use normal spreaders, over-height frames, or wire slings to simultaneously hang the containers and the cargo. The BB cargo and multiple base plates beneath the cargo can't be hung at the same time. Therefore, when BB cargo is being loaded or discharged, the base plates of the containers and cargo need to be hung separately. A suitable spreader should be used depending on the dimensions of the cargo. Then, the BB cargo will be secured on the base plate after it is loaded onto the vessel, and the workers will secure the cargo. In short, the space for shipping heavy cargo also needs to be specially arranged, as they cannot be placed on top of general-purpose containers. That's finally all of it. I'll summarize everything one more time. The two types of cargo that cannot be shipped using general-purpose containers are OOG cargo and BB cargo. The difference between the two is BB cargo needs multiple base plates due to being large and heavy. The cargo and container need to be hung separately. Only one container is needed for OOG cargo. Based on the nature of the cargo, there are three types of containers to choose from: open-top containers, flat racks with erected corner posts, and platforms with non-erected corner posts. These three types of containers can be hung with over-height frames or wire slings.
Not bad. Now, we'll talk about something more practical. What does a Yangming container actually look like? What is the standard for over-height, over-width, or overweight cargo? What situations require additional expenses or result in the cargo being rejected?
I'm not quite sure about that. You should come up and elaborate on that, Senior.
Come on up.
Dozo.
Listen up. The height, width, length, and payload are the basics for determining which container to use. Suppose you need to learn how to determine whether a cargo is over height, over width, or overweight. That means you'll have to remember the dimensions of Yangming containers. The external length of the base plate for Yangming Marine Transport's containers is divided into 20-foot and 40-foot. If it is an open-top container, it will be enclosed with walls, and it won't have an issue with over-width cargo. The cargo is considered over height when the total height exceeds 234 centimeters. The criteria for over height and over width cargo for flat racks and platforms mainly depends on the actual loading dimensions inside the container. The internal height of a 20-foot container is 223 centimeters, and the internal height of a 40-foot container is 195 centimeters. When the height of the cargo exceeds the internal height of the container, the cargo is over height.
Senior, what about platforms?
Since platforms don't have erected corner posts, the height above the base plate counts as over height. Therefore, the height of the cargo placed on top of the base plate is how over height the cargo is. As for the length, the internal length of a 20-foot container is 585 centimeters. And the internal length of a 40-foot container is 1,198 centimeters. Any cargo longer than 585 centimeters requires switching to a 40-foot flat rack. Any cargo longer than 1,198 centimeters requires switching to a 40-foot platform. Next is the width. The overall width of both the 20-foot and 40-foot containers are 243.8 centimeters. If the total width of the cargo exceeds that value, it is an over-width cargo. Pay attention here. The determination of over height and over-width cargo just mentioned refer to the total height and total width of the cargo itself. Therefore, the calculations also need to include the dunnage and lashing materials used to secure the cargo. For example, we add dunnage between the cargo and the flat rack to provide cushioning for the cargo. So, we have to include the dunnage to calculate if the total height exceeds the internal height of the container. On the other hand, the lashing materials used for securing cargo also have thickness. Therefore, the thickness of the lashing materials also needs to be included in the calculations of the cargo's total width. As for payload, the payload of a 20-foot flat rack is 31.2 tons, and the payload of a 40-foot flat rack is 40.1 tons. Likewise, don't forget to include the weight of packaging and lashing materials when calculating the total weight. If it is overweight, the container will not be able to carry the load and increase the risk of an accident. Another important thing related to weight, Yangming will not accept unbalanced cargo for safety reasons during the shipping process. That means the total center of gravity of the container cannot deviate from the center by more than 5%. If the center of gravity of each container is off-center, accidental overturning can easily occur when the cargo is in transit or when it's being hung or moved. Therefore, if there is more than one piece of cargo in a container, the weight and dimensions of each piece of cargo needs to be clearly marked to correctly calculate the center of gravity for the container. If the center of gravity deviates, the cargo will be rejected to the client, and they will be required to properly relash and stuff the cargo. Finally, the payload of a 20-foot flat rack is smaller than a 40-foot flat rack. In addition, the thickness of the base plate for the 20-foot flat rack is only 36 centimeters, while the thickness of the 40-foot flat rack's base plate is 64 centimeters. It's different. Have you memorized all of that?
223, 195, 585, 243.8. My goodness! There are so many complicated numbers!
That's just the way it is. You'll be using these container dimensions every day. You should probably copy this chart 100 times by hand, or come up with a formula to memorize them. Whatever you do, make sure you remember these numbers. Then, you'll know whether or not the cargo is over height or over width. You won't struggle giving explanations when clients ask,
Why do I need to be charged additional expenses?
Senior, what you said doesn't seem to include the reasons why clients need to be charged additional expenses. You told her the cargo is over width and cannot pass through the entry guide and needs to change to another space. If the cargo is over width, just charge them more for this. Why does she have to change the space, and what is an entry guide?
You asked a good question. We talked about the dimensions and weight of the containers themselves just now. However, in order for the containers to be smoothly loaded onto vessels or discharged onto the terminals, we also need to pay attention to various conditions such as the vessel structure, terminal regulations, and cargo conditions. The entry guide is an important component of vessels. What exactly is an entry guide? Follow me on board to see for yourself.